Everton are out of the FA Cup after the defeat to Sunderland on penalties, but there are some key takeaways from this game that we can look to take into Premier League games and help solve the problem of not having much fit senior players. Going into this game, we knew that there were going to be changes, one of which was Dwight McNeil moving from right wing to left wing, replacing the suspended Jack Grealish. Also replacing the suspended Michael Keane was Jake O'Brien, who moved from right back to centre back, with Nathan Patterson filling in for him at right back, Merlin Roll coming into the midfield, replacing Adamu, who I thought was fantastic against Wolves, but with nowhere to be seen today. I'm actually not quite sure why. If people can let me know in the comments, that would be much appreciated, because where was he? He was even teased it before the game with his shirt being shown on Twitter. But anyway, let's now look at the footage of the game to look at some of the problems Everton faced and then some of the solutions that Moyes used to get around those problems. Similarly to the Wolves game, we saw Harrison Armstrong take up this position when out of possession, man marking Granit Xhaka, similarly to how he did in the first half to João Gomez for Wolves, and that meant that Merlin Roll had a deeper role alongside James Garner, trying to be formidable in central areas. And you could see it in Everton's play that they were mainly concerned about preventing Sunderland from moving the ball into central areas like this, because you can see that most of Everton's players are focused on remaining central, with Tyler Dibbling there even moving inside a little bit. You can see this central block, this mid block that Everton have set up, is to stop Sunderland from playing the ball through the middle where they can do damage. But that did result to problems for Everton, actually, because you can see here Sunderland players started to just overload wide areas. The ball is here, and you can see that there isn't anybody really marking these types of spaces, meaning that Sunderland were able to funnel the ball down into wide areas. And with Everton being so passive, it meant that nobody was really quick to snap and jump and get at them, which basically meant that Sunderland camped in our final third, or our defensive third, their final third, for most of the first half. And it was creating chances for them, creating corners, long throws. We'll get to the long throw. But this is a prime example. This is Sunderland's centre-back, Nodi Mukiele. And him being that advanced, it's something you see from Man City, not from Sunderland. And that's something that it's a credit to them for being brave, but we also let them do it because the distances are absolutely huge here. Look, we're just not ready to engage. There's no pressure on the ball, meaning that even if you're in what is now a low block, it does mean that passes through into central areas are now open, because it's very hard to track when you've got a centre-back stepping into the final third, because the midfielders aren't really prepared for that. They're prepared to mark Granit Xhaka, the forwards, and the other midfielders. When Sunderland overloaded like this, it meant that passes through into the box became possible, and it looked very dangerous. And I honestly thought that they would score by being able to overload us in our own defensive third. And really, it's not how you want to play at home. You kind of want to be on the front foot. I get we didn't have the players to be on the front foot, but this happening and it being allowed to get to this point is it's not sad, but it's disappointing because there's potential there. Anyway, what happened in this game that I thought that was a bit of a problem, when Everton did win the ball back, you see Harrison Armstrong here has got the ball, but instantly, straight after winning the ball back, Beto has already set off making a run. And yes, he's dragging Luke O'Nien with him, but the problem is that once that pass is slightly delayed, we'll see it here, Beto is now completely gone. Beto is here. I point to him. Beto is there. That pass into him is pretty impossible because it's going to get cut out. And with Beto basically making one action to play a direct ball in behind, it takes away any chance you've got of playing it into his feet and then moving up the pitch as a unit. And that forced Harrison Armstrong to play wide, and then the ball got played long to Merlin Roll, and we lost it because the percentages of winning aerial duels when you've only got Merlin Roll and Beto up there are always going to be low, considering that Sunderland have got physical, powerful centre-backs that are used to that, and that's what they wanted Everton to do. And Merlin Roll's positioning in this game was a problem. This is from Everton trying to attack, Merlin Roll joining Beto in attack here. Merlin Roll made this run to support Beto's aerial duel in the hope that Beto won the first aerial duel and Merlin Roll was then able to latch onto it in and around the box. Firstly, I don't think he's got the quality to do that just yet. I think there's a player in there, and I did a video about him highlighting what made him good at Freiburg, and we weren't doing any of that. So criticising him in this role is fair in this system, but it's not a system that's built for him, and it's something that he's being plugged into when it doesn't really fit. It's kind of a mismatch in his profile compared to what we need him to do. So I get it. But because of Merlin Rowe's overcommitment, it often meant that James Garner in this position as the defensive midfielder had a lot of work to get through. You can see here, he's pressing the ball whilst also trying to apply some pressure out wide, meaning that Mikalenko also is getting sucked out of position. But whilst all of that is happening, you can see that so many Sunderland players in central areas are able to find space in spaces they couldn't find before because of overcommitment by Merlin Rowe, but also not being switched on defensively to come back into a position that allows Garner to be central and for other players to help out. And this is the problem with it. I'll show you the exact moment I realised that, oh yeah, this is a bit of a problem defensively because Merlin Rowe is not really a Doucouré. Doucouré was quite good off the ball. On the ball, okay, wasn't great. I'll hold my hands up. But you see here Merlin Rowe, he is man marking Granit Xhaka, and that's fine. That's completely fine because you're stopping Sunderland being able to play the ball centrally. You can see that Mukiele is standing on the ball because he's not really sure where to play it because that option to Xhaka is not on. Sunderland don't play the ball to Xhaka in this instance because they can't because of Merlin Rowe's initial good positioning, which means that they play around into a wide area, and that's okay. You can let them do that because the goal obviously is in the middle of the pitch. Forcing them into wide areas when we've got bodies there to counter it is fine. But look at Merlin Rowe right here. He's looking directly at the ball, and that's a problem because the player he's marking is Granit Xhaka, who is stood here. Granit Xhaka isn't even looking at the ball because he's trying to orchestrate things for the next phase of play already, knowing that Merlin Rowe isn't really switched on to where he is. And look, because Merlin Rowe then drops deeper, he now stands here, meaning that the distance between himself and Xhaka is big enough for Xhaka to then receive a pass. And then from there, Xhaka gets the ball and plays it out wide. And the problem with this is that our left winger, Dwight McNeil, is now dragged into a central position covering for what role should have been doing, meaning that Granit Xhaka can now play it out wide and then they can play it forward into the space that McNeil has just vacated to make up for Merlin Rowe not being that switched on. And that led to Sunderland progressing the ball down the sides of the pitch, and they often won long throws. And Sunderland are a team that you don't want to give long throws to because this happens. Things like this happen when Enzo Lefebvre gets the ball on the volley and buries it into the top corner. Great finish, but the problem with it is that this should never be allowed to happen. This touch, it's a great touch, but Mayenda is able to take a touch and then lay it off perfectly with excellent weight to Enzo Lefebvre, but he's also surrounded by Everton players who aren't applying pressure. There was some sort of hesitation in this moment. Tyler Dibling being one of the players who hesitated, and I get it, he's not a defensive player, but that that moment of hesitation did cost a goal here because we weren't able to apply pressure to Mayenda, which meant Enzo Lefebvre had loads of time and space. You can see it in this screenshot. He's already set waiting for it. Everton's players, all of them, are pretty much looking at the ball, not knowing where the actual threat is. And then things in the second half did begin to change, but the subs didn't really come on until the 71st minute. And up until that point, it was laborious, it was boring, it was lackluster. There was no movement in the final third. But one change that did help facilitate this was Tieno Barry. You can see him here. He's in the box at the back post. And what this does is that it just gives Everton another threat in the box. You can see Beto is already making a move towards the front post in this situation. And he's got 3 Sunderland players all concerned about him, but we've also got Tieno Barry at the back post with less Sunderland players concerned about him. So having that duality of threat does help Everton because both of these players are good in the air, and then being able to complement each other with different movements in similar areas does unlock a new threat for Everton, especially if you've got someone like Dwight McNeil on this side being able to cross the ball into this area. And I can see, well, Barry's already scored from that position this season, but I can see some goals coming from this if Everton do look to play Barry and Beto up top together. I didn't think it could work personally because they're quite similar in how they play. Both like to play as a single striker in a single striker formation, but with this movement, there may be some positives and that we can take into the Premier League game if we need to. Obviously, if you do play 2 strikers, you do sacrifice a player in midfield, and that may be a problem. Before we look at that in detail, let's talk about another player that came on in this game, Adamu. For those of you who've been here since the summer, you know that I like Adamu. It's no secret on this channel that Adamu is a good footballer in my eyes, and I think he can offer things. In the preview I did to this game, I did suggest that he could come on at left wing and operate in a very attacking, direct way, not having to worry about the defensive side of the game, which I think Moyes has a problem with. Asnu's defending, which maybe has held him back in terms of getting in at the left back spot, with also Jack Grealish being the nailed on left winger in that starting spot. That's held him back as well. But with no Grealish, Asnu was able to come on. And listen, he was actually very, very good. I'm very, very happy for Adam Asnu because in this game, he did prove a lot of people wrong. And maybe that can lead to more starts down the line. Because Adam Asnu came on in the 85th minute or 86th minute. That's not a lot of time to affect things. It could be forgiven that he didn't really get on the ball or make much of an impact because of the little time frame he's got to get on the ball and do things. But from about a minute of being on, something like that, he was already as positive as any other Everton player had been all game. And he goes on to win this penalty, and him being fouled is something I need to talk about because that's his superpower, not winning penalties, winning fouls and getting other players booked. He got 2 players booked in this game, and this wasn't even one of the bookings. Say what you will, it may be a soft penalty, but we were due one. Honestly, we were due one. And come to think of it, I did say that in my preview, I didn't think we'd get anywhere near the box to even win a penalty. So, you know what, we have to take these as they come. And then James Garner's penalty, really good penalty, the first one. The first one was good. To be fair, the second one was all right, but goalie gets to the right way. We'll get to that. But more on Adamu because I really like him. On the right this time, you can see how direct he is. He's willing to take it towards the opposition. There's a youthful freshness to him that I think we don't have. And without Iliman and Jai, for example, we haven't got really that direct runner. Grealish does it a bit, but often cuts back and passes it. Adamu is fearless in his dribbling, something that we just don't have when Njai isn't there. So this type of profile could work out really well for Everton, and I really do hope he gets a start in the next Premier League game, or at least gets a half, because he's proven it there. He's done more in 5 minutes of being on the pitch, less than 5 minutes of being on the pitch, than Dwight McNeil has done all season. And towards the end of the game, the front four for Everton was made up of Asnu, Beto, Barry, and Dwight McNeil. Basically, Everton were playing with a 4-2-4 when we had the ball and we were looking to move forward into the opposition's final third. And you know what? I don't mind it. I actually don't mind it because Barry and Beto's movements are quite complementary, with Beto wanting to go behind and Barry very, very comfortable with the ball at his feet. He's the most comfortable striker with the ball at his feet I've seen at Everton in a long time, despite looking a bit awkward and gangly at times. He's very good. He's very good. And there was a moment in the extra time where he won the ball, carried the ball about 40 yards of the pitch and won a foul. And just one more thing on Asnu. Just one more thing on Asnu. Getting the ball in this position. My biggest problem with Mykolenko is when he crosses the ball, he floats it. He aims it high, he floats it, and goalies often claim it, or it ends up being a very difficult task for centre-back strikers or anybody who's in the box to actually get some purchase behind it. There was one in the first half, I think, where Mykolenko crossed it into Tarkowski, but the ball was so floated and lacked that whip that it made it impossible for Tarkowski to, one, keep it down, and to, two, generate enough power to even treble Robin Ruffs in Sunderland's goal. But this ball from Adamu literally was perfect. He puts it on a plate, basically, in an ideal area for a striker just to run onto it and get any sort of contact. If there was any sort of contact on this cross, it's a guaranteed goal. Maybe not if Beto touches it, but in theory, it's a guaranteed goal. And the way he wins fouls is very good. It's really clever. Like, for a 19-year-old, it's really clever because he starts on the other side of Mukiele here. He actually started on this side. And then he just moves across Mukiele, who's already got his arm out, and he kind of buys the contact. And then that got Mukiele booked. And you can see it in Asner's face. He's in the wars a bit there, but he's brave enough to put himself in those situations. And I like it because there was questions about his physicality. I honestly don't think you can have those questions after this game. But ultimately, Everton didn't miss. 3 of their penalties were saved in this game, and the FA Cup dream lasted 120 plus a bit minutes. But what could you really expect? Without Jack Grealish, without Michael Keane, without Iliman Ndiaye, without Garner Gay, I could go on. Dewsbury Hall, there's another one. I could still go on. But with what we had against a team who are having one of the best seasons they've had in the last 15 years, something like that. We held our own. We didn't, it was competitive enough. We took it to the point where there's a 50-50 chance of winning it. And with Pickford, it's slightly more than a 50-50 chance because he's world class at penalties. But that's the nature of the game. Robin Durst and Sunderland's technical staff and analysts have clearly done a very good job on highlighting Everton's penalty takers. And the problem is, without these players there, like Jack Grealish, Iliman Ndiaye, for example, we actually don't have penalty takers or players that have taken a lot of penalties or are able to handle that pressure in this sort of scenario. So it meant that players were a bit, maybe a bit inexperienced in that position. I don't remember James Garner taking a penalty before today, and he took two. So that kind of shows the penalty takers we had weren't really up to it. And what can he do about that? He can't really make any plan for that. You just have to hope for the best with penalties. Even though I don't believe they are a lottery, I do think that factors such as ability to take a penalty do come into it massively. Anyway, we go again. Aston Villa next Sunday is a huge game in the Premier League, an opportunity to get back on track. And I'll be there after the game, so hit the like button and hit subscribe. All my social medias are in the bio, and a lot of you have been following me on there, so I'm very grateful. Yeah, until next time, with the Toffee.